Hello, everybody. Today we are announcing the entries for the January Art Dare, and we are also going to be introducing the March Art Dare. Welcome to Art Prof. This is our global art party. The Art Dare in January was to design wallpaper in any 2D media. So let's start out by looking at Courtenay's entry and explains this work contains fluffy animals in warm jackets and also some fish. These are ink wash, and later we will take a look at a fish which has an emboss filter on it. What do you think, Lauryn?
This is so delightful, Clara. I mean, I am biased because I love big fluffy cats. You know this. But I am just totally charmed by Courtney's work here. What I love is that there is a module that repeats. That for me is the big thing about wallpapers is you have a repeating module. But every individual cat is a different cat with a different jacket. And the jackets on top of that are patterned. They each have a different pattern. So it's like pattern on pattern. And there's so much to look at. I could spend hours just looking at each one, going from one to the other and comparing them. What's your favorite part about it?
I just love that it has a pattern that you can see that every cat has, but each one is unique. And I think the stereotypical way to think about wallpaper is okay, it's a pattern and that pattern repeats and exactly the same every time. And this is a very different take on that, balancing the unique cats versus what makes all of them similar, which is that they're cats and that they have a warm jacket on. Welcome, everybody who's here in the chat. Happy to have you here. Tell me in the comments, because we recently posted a video about breakfast, artists having breakfast. What did you have for breakfast? Because it's very important for your creativity. The other thing I'm noticing, Lauryn, is just the range of marks and lines.
Yeah, there's so much going on. There's so much texture. You've got cross hatching, you've got zigzags, you've got the stippling, which is the dot 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 dot. You have these circles on the jacket, the lines of the fur. There's just so much going on. The only thing about this is it's just I would have a hard time imagining making this, say, a full-size wallpaper for a house or something like that, because think about the amount of time that would need to be put in to make all of them unique but the same. Like, I love doing that kind of work, but also I know how hard it is, and you could be spending years on something like this. So I'm glad we are blessed with just a little swatch of this pattern. And you've saved your artist hand, Courtney, from doing a giant thing.
Look at this piece here with the fish. This is done with the embossing filter. It's so different because the ones with the cats, these are super whimsical. They're very detailed. There's a lot of line work going on, the hatching, but this is such a departure.
Yeah, this one is very elegant and reserved. You're really using that monochrome, low tonal range there, and I think that's what makes this successful is it has this whole other vibe that feels very soft and elegant. And what, Clara, what is an embossing filter? Like, how is this made?
I would assume it's digital
Okay.
because real physical embossing, you would need a printmaking press.
Oh, I thought this was done with that it was a physical embossing. I was like, wait, how would you do that?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Courtney, but I assume because it said embossing filter, that it's probably something you do in Photoshop or on your phone.
It would be cool to take this from digital to physical. I mean, think about what it would be like to touch this.
Oh,
That's all I can think about is running my hand across it.
I also like how this fish has this crinkly texture inside, and also how the fins are so varied, because even down here where it's a little bit more even, every single stroke is a little bit different. And I think, Courtenay, that's something you've done so well, is the consistency of us. Okay, we expect there to be a fin on every fish, but again, that quality of each one being its own thing.
Also, the fact that the scales are left out of the fish, but the detail in the fins are kept. I think that was an interesting choice because you could have had this more maximal effect by having both textures, but then they would fight with each other and you would lose the sense of the fish itself. So I think that was kind of smart to leave some areas that were up to the imagination.
Okay, Courtenay explains Procreate filter of watercolor. I had no idea that you could do that in Procreate.
Yeah, I didn't know either. I have to try that out.
Salinas says you can also emboss with a ball stylus and a foam pad. And Lisa says, I love textured wallpaper. Beautiful work, Courtenay. I'm just blown away by the range that you showed in your work. Also, Salinas, whose potato chips are calling them, is the next artist that we're going to look at. Salinas says, went back to my 2D design class, picked a few verbs from Richard Serra's verb list, ended up choosing to, quote, distill. Painted on mulberry paper, tweaked in Clip Studio paint, printed, traced, repainted, back into Clip Studio for the mock-up. Let's see where that began. These are the initial pieces of the design. And then this is the final version. And then, of course, we have the mock-up here. What's your take on that process, Lauryn?
Wow, there's so many steps to getting from a design to a wallpaper. It's pretty intense. And I really appreciate seeing several parts of that step, like seeing the individual module here, because wow, there's such a transformation from this work on mulberry paper down to the rendition in that living room. With the mulberry paper, I'm getting this sense of I'm really focusing on the shapes inside, like each of those individual bubbles. But then, and I'm also getting the texture from the mulberry paper. But when it's put in the room, it looks more like stained glass. It's a very different effect. It has this sort of luminous quality to it that's different from the paper itself.
Another thing that I really like about this, excuse me, I love how organic it is. It really looks like it's moving. If we look at some of these close-ups, I feel like all of the individual shapes, it's like they're pushing and squeezing, and some are very small and tightly pushed. Others are more large and they look like they're spreading out. So even though the design has very bold shapes and clearly defined outlines, I get a wonderful sense of movement.
Yeah, it looks like a school of fish. When you said organic, that brought everything out for me. I was thinking of or like murmurations of birds in the sky, how everything sort of pushes together into these larger shapes that start with these smaller individual elements. And one thing that I think is also really cool about that is because it's so organic there, and also you have this focus on the outlines, I don't pick up the tracking so much
Right.
when it goes to that larger thing. Like, I'm not thinking, oh, this is a divided tile, this is a divided tile. Like, you can obviously see where it repeats itself, but it doesn't cause a disruption that tracking sometimes does.
The tile quality of the original physical artwork, you don't even see that in the mock-up. And I feel like some wallpaper designs, you're just so conscious of that tile or whatever shape it is.
Yeah.
And here it's just seamless. I don't see that at all.
I mean, you can see it, but it feels like it's intentional, like it's a part of the design and not an oopsie, which I appreciate because a lot of people have trouble with that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Courtenay is asking, what is used for the gold? Salinas says it's gold watercolor. Beautiful range of materials. I love all the transformations that the work went through Salinas, which I think is something that's becoming more and more prominent, where artists are merging traditional and digital media. Have you seen much of that, Lauryn, in your sphere?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, I myself in my process have once I got Procreate on my iPad, I use that almost for every painting, testing stuff out when I get stuck. So I see that in my own practice. I see that in my friends using, say, projection methods. I think it's been happening for a long time, taking whatever technology is available and bringing it into your practice however you can make it useful.
Salinas has a good tip. Tilting is why it went into Clip Studio so I could get it seamless. Brilliant. I feel like I'm learning a lot about digital today in terms of all the various things that we can employ. Okay, the next artist is Lisa, who explains, I was under constant direct supervision of my son. Sounds like a very demanding client. And this wallpaper was Lisa's son's request. And I believe it's digital, although Lisa, if you're here, you can correct us if we're wrong. But what do you think? This is a very dedicated mom action.
Yeah, I hope your client was happy. What a collaboration, right? This one made me laugh so much because when I first saw it, Clara and I had this conversation before we went live here today. I thought that this was a take on wallpaper as in a desktop wallpaper on your computer. I was like, oh yeah, that would make sense. I'd use that as my desktop wallpaper. And it just, again, talking about incorporating the digital into work these days, it didn't even occur to me in the instructions what was being specified. I thought it was wallpaper, like wallpaper you put on your wall, but who's to say? It doesn't. This is an absolutely appropriate response.
It didn't even occur to me about thinking about this dare as wallpaper for your desktop. Who here thought of that? And who here did not? Because I just went to that wallpaper place, Alpha Workshops, which is at Powerhouse Arts in Brooklyn, and they were showing me these incredible tools and materials that they use to create these handmade wallpapers. So I guess I just totally missed that reference. That's because I'm an old fart. But Lisa is happy to report back. He was very pleased.
Oh,
Whoa.
good.
My kids would not be pleased. Trust me. The other day, my kid said to me, you're bad at this, you're bad at that, you're bad at that, and was just listing all the things I was bad at. And said, you're bad at drawing. Oh, actually, you're not bad at drawing.
Is this a game? Is this a new horrible game?
It's a version of all the things I'm bad at all day. Thank goodness I'm mature and don't take it personally. We also have Paper Starships, who says, great work. And Courtney says, this would be such a great focal wall in a child's room. I was going to say, I love how the ship is super transparent and atmospheric, because I think we all have seen the Death Star before. That's very clear cut. But the other parts of the image are very beautiful. Like I love all these like frosty blues and greens.
Yeah, the textures in this are really nice. I appreciate that up close view of the spaceship because I had not even noticed that texture on there before, and I'm really into it. It does feel very mysterious, very much like some sort of Nordic horror story where you see a ship in the sky or some like phantom boat or something, and it's got a sort of frost patina on it. And I love how that mirrors the texture that's happening on that frosty ground there.
I also, Lisa, am curious. These look like paint splatters. Maybe this one's adjusted, but I don't know. Again, maybe there's some Procreate thing that does that, but I noticed that immediately because sometimes it's easy to just say, oh, okay, I have this one brush, dot, 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 dot. But I feel like the depth is so good.
Yeah, it's like there's lots of different stars going on. It's really important to have that sense, or having the different shapes of stars because that creates depth to the image. It makes it look less like a flat wallpaper, more like a scene.
Butter says the foreground land is something that I want to climb around on. Absolutely. I just am mesmerized by that cool, subtle range of colors that you put into that area. Okay, we have some prizes to give out. The honorable mention goes to Salinas. Congratulations, everybody. And the prize goes to Courtenay. Great job, everybody. I love seeing the flood of submissions. Showing off the creativity of our community is just fantastic. Okay, Lisa's revealing Photoshop has infinite brushes. Yes, ones that I don't know or understand.
I know, I use like one brush. I shouldn't, but I do.
Okay, let's announce the March Art Dare, which is expressive drawing. And we want you to experiment with mark making to create movement and expression. Let's talk about what this is, because expressive drawing does not have a very hard, concrete definition. I think everybody has their own definition of what makes something expressive. Tell us in the comments, what to you is expressive drawing? What does it remind you of? Maybe there's an artist who you think particularly has an expressive way of drawing. Lauryn, what is it to you?
I think it is using mark and sometimes color in a way that exceeds the representational, so goes beyond that, has a sense of mood or emotion or physicality to it. That's very vague. I actually, when you brought it up, I was thinking, I don't know. I know it when I see it, I guess. I think you're an expressive drawer, Clara.
You are too, though, because I brought up some of your marker drawings, and they are images you can recognize. You can say, okay, that's a window. But you know something, when I was zooming in on particular areas, I noticed how abstract some of the passages are, and also the overlap of the transparent marks. So I wonder if you could break down for us how you make those decisions.
Well, when you have the marker, it can only do so many things because they generally have sort of big tips on them. So I'm more focusing on getting a shape of something. I'm looking at color blocks rather than defining a shadow or a detail or something like that. This is one where it's pretty obvious, where shape becomes the most shape and color, I guess, are the most important things, and so I'm just layering shape on top of shape. And the scene that I'm working from is more of a starting point. It's the drawing sort of becomes a thing that separates itself from the reality. Usually these are done they are done from life or started from life, and then I work from a photograph afterwards. But there becomes a point pretty quickly in the piece where that's just the looking back at the representation, the thing in front of me, that's gone, and it just becomes a thing unto itself.
Sometimes I like to define things by what they are not. For me, expressive drawing usually doesn't involve tons and tons of blending. Usually the marks are more raw. They are not blended into things. You put them down and they stay there, which is one of the reasons why I think it's difficult, because I think a lot of us are uncomfortable with a mark that
Yes.
is so not buffed.
I'm glad we're having this conversation now, Clara, because after my surgery, I sort of tightened up in my work a little bit. I was really concerned about getting representation, and I still am, or about blending things together. And I lost my sense of, I guess, expressive mark making, or things have become a lot more blurred together. So this is helping me go back and think through some of the things that make something expressive.
We have some great definitions. Ginger says expressive drawing is often very abstract, maybe letting your mind wander a bit. And I think that's very well illustrated in this drawing, Lauryn, because if we look at this close up, I can't tell that it's a landscape with branches. I just see it as a sea of marks that are moving and layered on top of each other. I think maybe the willingness to let go of some of that representation.
Yeah. Yeah. What about German expressionism? I know
Oh,
that's not
love it. Oh
that's
my God.
expressionism, expressiveness.
Oh, we'll have the Art Dare page up soon, but oh, Max Beckman, Kathy Kollwitz, Kirkner. Oh, my favorite movement of all time.
Are those about mark? What makes them expressive? I'm sorry, we don't have them up here, but I am really curious about this.
I think a lot of it is the texture in the mark,
Uh-huh.
that a mark is not a clear-cut graphic shape, that it has a almost brushiness to it. But also a lot of the expressiveness is that those portraits are very distorted. If you look at Max Beckman's self-portraits, and I'm going to put his name into the chat, so if you guys want to look him up, he does so many things with his head. He sort of like turns his hair very square like,
Mhm.
and his eyes get very wide. So I don't think expression is just in the mark. I think it's also in the portrayal of the subject.
Mhm. Yeah, okay, this is really helping me out. So it does sort of follow expressionism does sort of follow that rule where you maybe start with something that is representational, but you diverge from it to emphasize some other qualities about it that are not necessarily physically there.
Salinas says, expressive to me is very intuitive and emotional. That's a really great way to put it. I think it goes to what we said about the distortion, that oftentimes if you have a face that is all wonky, I'm thinking about George Grosz, and I'll put his name into the chat. I mean, his work is sort of verging on caricature. Gosh, how do you spell Grosz? I don't know if this is correct. You guys
Yeah.
can look
What
it
is
up.
the difference between caricature and expressionism? There's another one.
You could argue that they're both.
Hmm.
You can have a caricature which is very expressive.
Yes, you can. But can you have, I guess, expressionism? Now I'm getting the words confused. Expression, expressive. I'm getting tongue-tied. Anyways, Paul Klee is a great artist. I agree. He's very expressive.
I think the main thing to consider as you guys do this art dare is, what is expressive drawing to you in the moment, and then to explore different ways to show that. For example, I know some of you guys have done some of the lessons in our expressive drawing track, and this track, the lessons are created to provide structures, a technique, a material that lends itself to being very expressive. I don't know if we did this exercise in my class where I had the models slowly move and then
Yes.
you had to draw them. Yeah, what was
Yes.
that like?
Oh, it was so
Hard.
frustrating.
Yeah.
Because you can never get a full contour or just your drawing. It keeps morphing. And so you end up with sort of an unintelligible mess that is a record of somebody's movement rather than a record of their physical body. Uh, and that is very expressive because it's all about movement and less about the representation of a physical object.
This lesson and the entire track in general, we give you everything you need to do the lesson. There's oftentimes a video, if not more, that you can watch to see the live demo. We have reference images. In this case, I provide a lot of particular dance videos that have a huge range of motions. And what I recommend is to just watch it at slow speed. It looks like Courtenay has done some of that. And another good point from Lisa, which is pulling out big paper. Why do you think shifting the scale could help somebody be more expressive?
Well, we've been talking about movement and physicality, and when you involve your whole body in a work, well, okay, I should backtrack a little bit and say that if you're using a small piece of paper, there's only one part of your body that's moving. It's generally your wrist and your fingers. It's not your arm. Nothing else is engaged. You're just looking at it. So you don't really have a wide range of movements you can do or a wide range of marks you can make. It's all very much concentrated in here. Whereas if you're using big paper or big materials, more of your body is engaged and it becomes more of an athletic exercise. And you can really, you have a lot more variability in what you control in terms of pressure. You can put like your full weight into something versus, I don't know, what, 10 pounds in your hand or something like that. You've got so much different range of movement. You could use your hair, you could use your full shoulder and arm, you could use you could use a paintbrush attached to a broomstick. I've seen that done. There's just, you could go full Jackson Pollock and dance around with a paint can. And it's a very different experience and a very valuable one, I think, to really feel making artwork in different parts of your body that you don't usually engage.
Salinas says big paper is so intimidating. I haven't practiced enough. It is, absolutely. If you're not used to that, it feels very hard. You also need to have some space to be able to do that. So not everybody can. However, my suggestion is use super cheap materials.
Yeah.
Get crappy butcher paper or something that doesn't cost a lot. Use a material that is easy on a big scale. For example, if you have a big paintbrush, that's a lot easier. I wouldn't do one in colored pencil because that would take forever. And so a lot of it is oftentimes picking a material that lends itself to that. And typically speaking, it's the materials that have a blunter tip that are bigger. Although this is an exercise where you draw a interior space as if you have X-ray vision. And so this gets you to see across all of the various things instead of drawing one object at a time. So there's a million ways you guys can do this, but the drawing track is really helpful if you don't know where to start, because I think a lot of this is about shaking up your current practice.
Yeah, definitely. You can't be expressive, I think, or you can't manage expressiveness well without having the ability to be loose. And that's just because expressiveness is so much about that contrast between different types of marks. And a lot of us have lots of experience being very tight and controlled, but it's much harder. Yeah, same, big same.
Oh
It's
my God, so tight.
And it's same as your body too. If you don't use it, you lose it. Like we lose flexibility in our bodies over time and in our brains. You got to keep stretching out of that. And I think that helps get towards that sense of expressiveness.
Great suggestion from Courtenay. Cut open paper bags for big drawings And Pasquale says kids easel paper or craft postal paper. I think we get giant frog in my throat today.
Yeah.
We tend to get more precious and we tend to be more careful when we have expensive supplies.
Yes.
So that stuff where you don't have to think about that, that's very helpful. Now, here's an exercise. It's very simple, but I recommend trying this. You do with charcoal, whatever, soft pastel. It is an exercise. I think we did this when you were in my class, where you have to draw multiple vertical lines, or you can do horizontal as well. And the idea is that the line has to change. For example, on the left, that's a line, it changes a little bit, but not very much. But if you look at the ones like on the far right, that one starts very light and then it gets very dark and it gets really wide. And so that has helped me a lot with expressive drawing, is to think about an individual mark, not as a consistent line that is the same throughout.
This is, I've done this. I believe we did this in your class. I've also done a modification of this with my own students where I make them team up together and come up with 100 different marks, make 100 different types of marks. And you run out of marks by, say, mark 30, and then things get really wild, and they sort of put out some very unhinged marks using their hands, their thumbs, random things around the room. There aren't really any rules. It's just make 100 different types of marks. So I think that's related, and that can also help with figuring out, okay, what is actually available to me when I make a piece of artwork.
This was the milestone for me in terms of loosening up, because I was very tired. I was like doing super detailed photorealistic pencil drawings in high school, and this is wet charcoal. First of all, it's a huge mess. So if you don't like mess, this probably isn't the best material. But the difference is that it was a material I knew well, which was charcoal. But the second you put water on it, it's the Wild West. It can do anything. It's very fast. And actually, a lot of the marks you're seeing here, it's me moving my hand. I mean, it's literally like finger painting most of the time. But I have found that the tool you use, so instead of holding the charcoal and drawing with the tip, I was like pushing it and moving it around, and that became very physically involved.
Yeah, I remember using wet charcoal. It was one of my favorite drawing materials when we were in drawing class. I mean, I hate charcoal so much. I have the same ick feeling that Jordan does about it. But wet charcoal is super useful for getting so many different types of marks and smears. Like, I love what you're doing on the left there, Clara, where seems like you've got a reflection and a lake going on there, and you just have that smear from the sky into the lower part of the horizon, and I can feel that. I know what that looks like in real life too, and that is like such a wet charcoal move.
Salinas says, I have some Amazon boxes that came with crumpled paper packing. I'll try that instead of my big Bristol. Courtney's asking, do you iron them first or lean into the wrinkles? Salinas has no idea. I just had the thought. I imagine I will lean into the wrinkles. Yeah, sometimes the surface, not having that perfectly clean, smooth paper, becomes a textured surface that changes your mark making.
Yeah, one thing that I've seen that I thought was really cool was I saw someone crumple up a canvas or a piece of paper and then spray paint on top of it, and that just emphasizes all of those wrinkles in there, and it looks like mountainous terrain, and it's wonderful. Yeah.
Another thing to do, gesture drawing, because when you only have 5 minutes to draw something, you can't tighten up. And gesture drawing for me is really fun because I'm just like, okay, boom, 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 just so many drawings in a short period of time. And for me, this was also the milestone, is when I had to do these 2 minute, 5 minute drawings. It's like lighting a fire under your butt.
Yeah, you really learn. One of my favorite phrases that I use over and over again is the economy of marks or economy of mark making. And you have to have an economy of mark making when you're doing a gesture drawing because you just don't have time to put on 5 bajillion little detailed marks. You're putting down like, okay, this is the body, this is this mark right here. That's going to be the full shadow of that belly. It's just bam, 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 bam.
The Art Dare Leap is for people who want to make this a bigger project. It is not required. All you need to do is submit one piece to officially enter. So the Art Dare Leap is to do 3 lessons from the Expressive Drawing track. And we'll have the Art Dare page up pretty soon. Remember, we do have an Art Dares channel in our Discord, and this is so fun throughout the month to see people's ideas, getting inspired from each other. Tell me in the comments, have you participated in the Art Dares channel in the Discord? And what have you liked from it? I just love opening it and I just see this like flood of different artworks. I get inspired by other people's pieces. Also, you can submit in this channel. In the pinned messages, we have instructions for how to do that. We are no longer doing submissions on Instagram. However, we love sharing your work. So please tag us, put us in your Instagram story. Now, if you don't have Discord, what you can do to submit is go to our website, and you can see in the menu bar under Learn and Create, there's an Art Dares section, and just go to the Art Dare page, scroll down, and you will see we do have a link for a Google form. So that's the other way you can submit as well. Join our Discord, and if you are not in the Discord, let's exert some peer pressure. But after the stream today, we are going to meet in discussions, which is under live streams. We renamed that channel. Used to be called post live streams. It is now called discussions. So if you guys want to chat, hang out with me and Lauryn right after the stream, we will be in there. We have spaces in our upcoming workshops. Mountain Landscapes has 2 spots. You better get on this if you want to get into the workshop. And remember, the workshops are a 2-week experience. We now are doing audio critiques. You get a transcript and a recording. And we also have the 3-hour live session. So these are really great experiences. You work in a small group, you work with me, and we just have such a great time. So lots of different workshops, underwater scenes, crayon workshop, and lastly, join our art club. This is so fun. We have hangouts, voice sessions, open studios, audio critiques. This is the place to be in our Discord. I mean, just anywhere in their Discord, but especially the art club. You get a lot of access to staff and critiques from me. Gandhi would like for you to join our global art party. Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. We will see you next time. Join us in the Discord. Bye.
Bye.